cases so cold that it's likely impossible to ever get at the truth.
Tonight, try and try again. A special investigation team is taking another run at dozens of cold case murders and disappearances in Thunder Bay.
From her arm and to her elbow, it burns every day.
A woman suffers severe burns after she goes to hospital for a broken ankle. And the Russian takeover of Ukrainian cities continues. Good evening. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. A new confidential report obtained by APTN News is calling for the criminal reinvestigation into the sudden deaths of 14 Indigenous people in Thunder Bay. A total of 16 deaths were identified as needing a review by police or the Ontario coroner. All of this is in addition to deaths of 9 Indigenous people already being reinvestigated, first identified in a report on the broken trust that Indigenous people have with the Thunder Bay Police Service. The so-called blended investigation team also confirmed in the report there are 25 unsolved cases of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls with Thunder Bay Police, some dating back 20 years. Lawyer Julian Faulkner represents the family of Stacey DeBungy. DeBungy's death led to the complaints that launched a systemic review of the Thunder Bay Police Service by Ontario's police watchdog. Faulkner says the Thunder Bay Police Service needs to be shut down.
I think we are so far past the point of simply investigating or reinvestigating one death versus another. These are terrible tragedies. The families have been left with unanswered questions, cases so cold that it's likely impossible to ever get at the truth. Only in the circumstances of Indigenous people would this ever be accepted in this country. It's extremely discouraging and demoralizing. And how this police services is permitted to stay in business one more day is totally beyond me.
You can find much more on this story, including the entire interview with Julian Faulkner, over on our website, aptnnews.ca. Well, it's been 37 years since enfranchisement was removed from the Indian Act, but thousands of people continue to suffer from its fallout as they fight for First Nation status. The federal government now says it plans to introduce legislation to end this fight. APTN's Fraser Needham has more.
For decades, Nadia Salmanu has been fighting for First Nation status.
My grandmother and my mom applied on my brother and I's behalf and my cousin Royce multiple times since my childhood, and multiple times we've been turned down by the Government of Canada.
This is because her great-grandfather chose to give up his status so that his children could avoid going to residential school. He was one of many who chose enfranchisement to gain rights First Nations people lacked at the time, such as voting in Canadian elections or owning land. The government did away with enfranchisement under the Indian Act in 1985, but the discriminatory policy continues to affect thousands of Canadians, such as Catherine Fournier. She has status, but her 3 children do not because her grandfather wanted to vote.
They mostly lived in on reserve or sort of in unincorporated areas out in the Indian country. But then when they moved to Kenora, it was a place, I guess, where he could vote if he wasn't an Indian. So he enfranchised.
Salmanu and Fournier are part of a Charter of Rights challenge against the federal government filed in the BC Supreme Court last summer. Ryan Beaton is their lawyer.
So today there are individuals, children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren of those individuals who are still denied status because of a family history of enfranchisement. And we've said that's discriminatory.
Last week, the federal government announced it had reached an agreement with the plaintiffs to put litigation on hold. Indigenous Services Minister Patty Hajdu says the government plans to introduce legislation by the summer.
I would say that my sense is the majority of that was an effort by the federal government to, to colonize and to decrease the numbers of indigenous people, if you will, that had rights according to treaty. And so this government has been very, I think, intentional through our work to make sure that we make reparations to groups that lost their status.
Salmanu says it has been a long and painful process in trying to gain status, but says she is more determined than ever to see it through.
Personally, I want to see justice here for every single person, every single Indigenous person who gave up their indigeneity in a forced way.
Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
The Federation of Sovereign Indigenous Nations in Saskatchewan expects its new health ombudsperson will be extremely busy. The Federation signed a landmark agreement with the federal government to address systemic racism in healthcare, something that the FSIN chief has been saying is needed for years. We'd like to warn you that this story contains graphic images. APTN's Leanne Sanders has more.
What this lady went through is torture.
The FSIN says 2 years ago, a James Smith First Nations woman suffered severe burns after being injected with potassium when she went to a Prince Albert hospital for a broken ankle. At the time, the FSIN described what Jeanette Sanderson went through on June 20th, 2020 as torture. Chief Bobby Cameron says it's just this type of case the new health ombudsperson will look at.
Time and time again, almost on a daily basis, we had our people calling us saying that they were, mistreated or they were subjected to some type of racism. No one should be treated like that when going into a hospital, but our First Nation people are.
According to Sanderson's daughter, Janelle Kinch, her mom still suffers and has limited use of her arm and hand.
From her arm and to her elbow, it burns every day. She has to put a cream on her, some kind of hospital cream that they prescribe her to settle the pain. So she's in pain every single day.
Kinch says the family has until June to pursue a legal case for damages and is working to find a new lawyer after their legal counsel retired. In reports from 2020, the Saskatchewan Health Authority said it was investigating the incident. We asked the health authority what has been done about her case, but in a brief emailed statement this week, they said they can't comment due to patient privacy concerns. The federal government committed $1.17 million to the First Nations Health Ombudsman and has hoped the office can be running within the year. Chief Cameron says they should expect to be busy.
And this was our way of putting the healthcare system here on notice. It will not be tolerated anymore. We're going to start building human rights cases. We're going to start taking legal action.
Leanne Sanders, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
To southern Alberta, where Siksika leadership says many of its members have been coming forward with complaints of discrimination while receiving health care there. As Tamara Pimentel reports, the nation is now working with a law firm to bring those complaints to light.
Siksika Chief and Council announced it will be collecting stories from people who have experienced racism within the Alberta healthcare system.
A steady flow of complaints have been made to Chief and Council in this area, and leadership is working with a team of lawyers on this matter.
Chief Ore Crowfoot says the number of complaints have been rising with the pandemic and wants to ensure a safe space for Siksika members or any Indigenous person in the area to come forward.
We are constantly being reminded of racist and heartbreaking stories.
Stories like Joyce Echaquan, who live-streamed mistreatment she was receiving from Montreal healthcare workers moments before she died in 2020.
Her story is not an isolated incident. Far too long we have been subject to racist and discriminatory behavior while receiving health care. For too long we have been insulted when we were at our most vulnerable.
In January, a study from the University of Alberta revealed emergency rooms across the province are treating First Nations patients less urgently than non-Indigenous. Councillor Samuel Crowfoot says many members here choose to avoid local healthcare facilities because of racist treatment.
The complaint process in general in Alberta for any type of medical issue or any type of racist or derogatory event is extremely hard to follow and is governed not in the most efficient way. Thereby, I think it reduces the amount of complaints that come in.
CEO of Siksika Health Services, Tyler White, says ultimately the stories will be brought to all levels of government.
Disappointed that we've had to take these type of measures in order to get the attention of our government, both federal and provincial. And these aren't just stories, these are real experiences.
The complaints will be collected over an unknown period of time, depending on how quickly members come forward. Once ready, the nation will work with JFK Law Corporation to decide the next steps. Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Siksika.
We want to hear what you think about racism in the healthcare system. Here's how you can let us know. You can send your emails to news@aptn.ca. You can leave a comment on aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. You can follow APTN News, join the conversation, and see all of our latest stories. Well, and some breaking news out of Ottawa now. CTV News is reporting that Tamara Leach, one of the organizers of the so-called Freedom Convoy that occupied Ottawa for 3 weeks last month, has been granted bail. A judge found a previous justice erred when Leach was denied bail on February 22nd. There are conditions like a $20,000 surety, which means whoever signed it has to pay that much if Leach violates the terms of it. Leach also had to put up a $5,000 bond that she would pay out of her own pocket if she violates any of the conditions. We need to take a break, but still ahead, ice road troubles in the north are a sign of climate change, some say. We'll explain when we come back.
We just have never seen anything like this before. So the trucks came up to this, they saw that, and there was no way they were going to challenge it.
Welcome back. The third round of Russia-Ukraine talks is now finished, and there's still no breakthrough. Multiple attempts at a ceasefire that holds have failed. Ukraine is saying that there were some small positive developments today. The concern is that Russia is using the talks to stall for time or using them as a PR exercise to appear as if it's open to negotiations as Russian troops continue to bombard Ukrainian cities and towns. A warning that some images in this next story are disturbing. We have some frightening video to show you out of a deadly attack on the city of Irpin, Ukraine. To say 3 people, including 1 child, were killed when the city was hit with Russian mortar shells on Sunday. The attack came while a number of people were fleeing from the fighting. Ukraine says that humanitarian corridors proposed out of Kyiv, Kharkiv, Mariupol, and Sumy that lead to Russia and Belarus are immoral. It comes as Ukrainian officials wrapped up a third round of negotiations, but with no real breakthrough. One MP says there's a major humanitarian crisis unfolding in many parts of the country.
The Russian forces are just shooting at civilians. Yesterday, during the evacuation, they just started to shell and shoot at humanitarian corridor, and 8 civilians were killed, including 2 children. So today, this evacuation is continuing. People are trying to get out of this fighting area, and that is really a huge, huge problem.
Goncharenko is also asking its allies to provide more weapons as well as fighter jets. Well, a convoy of trucks headed to a remote community in the Yukon by ice road got stuck last week due to overflow. While the trucks have since delivered their cargo safely, the community's chief worries the incident is an alarming sign of climate change. Here's Sarah Connors with that story.
These photos from last week show a truck that was stranded for 5 days outside of Old Crow, a remote fly-in community in northern Yukon. The truck was part of a convoy that was delivering building supplies by ice road to the small community, which is home to the Vuntut-Gwitchin First Nation. But around 10 kilometers outside of Old Crow, near a river crossing, the trucks ran into overflow.
Now, overflow is very dangerous. I think for your listeners, imagine quicksand at -40. That's what overflow is.
Chief Dana Tija Tram says the overflow was on top of 2.5 feet of ice. Overflow results when the weight of ice and snow pushes down, forcing water up over the ice.
We just have never seen anything like this before. So the trucks came up to this, they saw that, and there was no way they were going to challenge it.
Eventually, community members built an ice bridge, which all trucks were able to cross safely into the community by Thursday morning. Due to the difficulty of building an ice road to Old Crow, the community hasn't had access to one since 2014. Tisha Tram says the event was concerning because the trucks were carrying supplies for projects like a new elders complex, which can't be flown in.
Literally, the foundation for people's lives is now coming up across 2.5 to 3 feet of overflow that nobody has ever seen before.
And unfortunately, these are exactly the types of conditions that we can come to expect to see more and more of in Northern Canada.
Chris Dirksen is a research scientist with Environment and Climate Change Canada. He says extreme overflow is consistent with climate change because there was above normal snowfall this past winter and a warmer fall period.
So again, both of these conditions are exactly what we expect with climate change. So a sort of a late, delayed start to the ice season, and then still extensive snowfall during the winter, and that's the combination that leads to these overflow type events.
It's no surprise to Tisha Tram. In 2019, Old Crow declared a climate emergency because of issues like changing bird migrations and receding permafrost. He worries this is yet another sign of a drastically changing environment and says everyone needs to pay attention to what's happening in the north.
If we're seeing this in Old Crow, then Canadians and Yukoners will be seeing this in time to come in the south, as we are a canary in the coal mine.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
If you spent more than a year in a First Nations community affected by a long-term drinking water advisory between 1995 and 2021, there may be some money coming your way. It's part of an $18 billion settlement of the First Nations drinking water class action lawsuit. It was reached with the federal government last December, and $1.5 billion has been set aside to affected individuals. They can now apply for compensation online. For more details, you can visit www.firstnationsdrinkingwater.ca. Well, we need to take another break, but when we come back, a fashion fundraiser for basketball.
It's all Indigenous, it's ours, right? And not only ours anymore, the whole world is looking at the design and the culture and all of the traditional images on our clothing and saying, yeah, this could fit in the modern world.
Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Kelly McLeod got this picture of a stunningly beautiful lynx in northern Manitoba. Kelly said that the lynx seemed to be posing for the picture. You can send your amazing photos by email to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Let's take a look now at tomorrow's weather forecast. To the east coast, we've got 6 and a chance of flurries for St. John's, Charlottetown 2 and snow expected there. -10 and snow for La Grande River, Kuujjuaq -11, snow expected. Chibougamau, sunshine and -8, Val-d'Or -3, same with Rouyn-Noranda, snow expected there. 0 and sunshine for North Bay, 1 and cloud for Sault Ste. Marie. 0 with a chance of flurries for Thunder Bay, same thing for Sioux Lookout except for it'll be -1. Pukatawagan -17 with snow, God's Lake and Norway House both snow and -4. Snow and -5 for Winnipeg, 0 and snow for Dauphin. -10 and snow for North Battleford and Saskatoon. -12 and snow for La Ronge, -18 and snow for Stony Rapids. Snow continues in Alberta, -11 for High Level, -12 for Fort Mac. Snow down south too, -9 and snow for Calgary and Medicine Hat. Sunshine finally in BC, 3 for Kamloops, 0 in Quesnel. 9 and sunny for Prince Rupert and Sans, but sunshine -4 for Dease Lake. -8 and sunny for Mayo, -14 and sunny for Old Crow. Sunshine continues into the NWT for Yellowknife and Wrigley. -11 and sunny for Nuvik, -28 sunshine for Palatec. -22 and sunny for Chesterfield. Newyacht, -25, sunny skies there. Clyde River and Pangerton, both sunny and -22. A fundraiser gala was recently held in North Vancouver to raise money for a women's basketball team. As APTN's Tina House reports, it was quite the night to remember.
Excitement is building backstage as the supernatural models are getting ready to hit the runway. Tonight, it's all about showcasing Squamish Nation fashion designer Hamakala's Pam Baker and her brand, Touch of Culture.
It's a fundraiser for a basketball team called AMR, All My Relations, and that's a team I coach. And we are doing the fundraiser showcasing my clothing lines, as well as introducing another designer. And there's going to be some hip-hop dance and some really fun stuff happening tonight.
Businessman and philanthropist Dave Chuckero was also in attendance.
What do you want to say about the clothes coming down the catwalk?
Well, it's all Indigenous. It's ours, right? And not only ours anymore, the whole world is looking at the design and the culture and all of the traditional images on our clothing and saying, yeah, this could fit in the modern world.
Jolene, tell me about tonight and what it means for you.
It just really means that we've had a really hard time with COVID, and it's just beautiful to be together in a big space like this since 2020. So it's a really beautiful event to come together. So the fundraiser is to get us to all native. Like, this is our basketball, please buy it. It has our logo on it. Basically, it costs a lot to travel with a large team and to pay for a coach, to pay for gym time, to pay for outfits. So it's just basically, it enables us to get there.
Along with playing on the AMR basketball team, Jolene is the head of the Supernaturals modeling agency. She says her talent pool is hitting the international stage for numerous ad campaigns.
Ricky Lee Watts went to London for 48 hours, shot for Specsavers, and then came back. And he's actually here tonight. He'll be walking the catwalk. International model, has never done modeling before, but is a supernatural.
They reach their fundraising goals at the end of the event. Tina House, APTN National News, North Vancouver.
Well, who doesn't want to go shopping there now? Well, that is your news to kick off the week. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to get right up to speed on all your Indigenous news at our website, aptnnews.ca. Have a great night.